My name is Lily, and this is the story of how my honeymoon became a fight for survival. Even now, months later, I wake up in cold sweats, my fingers clutching at phantom ropes that once bound my wrists. The scent of pine needles sends me spiraling back to those 3 days in hell. We had chosen the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest for our getaway, my husband Ethan's idea. He'd found this listing for a cabin that seemed too good to be true. Hand-hewn logs, a stone fireplace, and complete isolation. "Just think," he'd said, his eyes bright with excitement. "No cell service, no Wi-Fi, no distractions, just us." I should have recognized those words for what they were. A death sentence. The drive up was beautiful, in that pristine way that makes you feel small and insignificant. Massive Douglas firs towered overhead, their branches weaving together to form tunnels of shadow and light. The GPS died 20 minutes before we reached the cabin, but Ethan insisted he knew the way. That's my husband, always so sure of himself. Was sure of himself. I'm still not used to speaking about him in the past tense. The cabin appeared exactly as advertised. Rustic, charming, with a wraparound porch and windows that gleamed in the late afternoon sun. But something felt off. Maybe it was how the windows seemed to watch us as we unpacked the car, or how the wind through the trees sounded almost like whispered conversations. "Home sweet home," Ethan declared, sweeping me off my feet to carry me across the threshold. I laughed, but the sound died in my throat when I saw what was waiting inside. A single red rose lay on the kitchen counter, fresh, with water droplets still clinging to its petals. "Did you arrange this with the owner?" I asked. Ethan's confusion mirrored my own. "No, I thought maybe you had," he said. We brushed it off as a nice gesture from the cleaning service, but that rose became the first thread in a tapestry of horror that would unfold over the next 72 hours. If only we'd listened to our instincts and left right then. Our first evening was deceptively perfect. We opened a bottle of champagne, slow danced by the fireplace, and made love on the bearskin rug. Through the window, the forest had transformed into a wall of absolute darkness. Looking back, I realize now, we weren't looking out into the night. Something in the night was looking in at us. The trouble began at dawn. I woke to find Ethan already dressed in hiking gear, practically bouncing with excitement. "There's this hidden lake," he said, showing me a crude map he'd found in the cabin's guest book. The previous guests wrote that it's spectacular at sunrise. I was less enthusiastic. "Don't you think we should rest? Enjoy the cabin?" But Ethan had that look, the one that meant his mind was made up. "Come on, Lil. Where's your sense of adventure?" Adventure. The word tastes like ashes in my mouth now. The trail to the lake was barely marked, more game path than hiking trail. The morning mist clung to the forest floor, wrapping around our ankles like ghostly fingers. Halfway there, we found the first sign that something was wrong. A single hiking boot, practically new, abandoned in the middle of the path. Inside was a sock, still forming the shape of a foot. Maybe someone lost it? Even as Ethan said it, we both knew that wasn't true. You don't just lose a boot and keep walking. Not out here. The lake, when we finally reached it, was beautiful in the way that deadly things often are. Mirror smooth, reflecting the sky and surrounding pines like black glass. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, just absolute silence. That's when we saw him, the figure on the far shore. He stood perfectly still, like a photograph. Even at that distance, I could feel his eyes on us, on me. He raised one hand in greeting, and my blood turned to ice. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" His voice carried across the water with unnatural clarity, as if he were standing right beside us. The words seemed to bypass my ears and manifest directly in my mind. Ethan's hand found mine, squeezing tight. "We should go," he whispered. As we turned to leave, I heard splashing. Against my better judgment, I looked back. The man was gone. The lake's surface was rippling, as if something had just gone under. We practically ran back to the cabin, but our sanctuary had been violated. That's the only way to describe what we found. Our clothes removed from our suitcases and carefully laid out on the bed, arranged like bodies at a funeral. On my pillow was another red rose, and beside it, a Polaroid photo of us sleeping from the night before. Ethan tried calling for help, but of course, there was no signal. We ran to the car, but the engine wouldn't start. Someone had cut the spark plug wires. We were trapped. When night fell, the true horror began. First came the knocking, not at the door, but from inside the walls. Then the whispers, speaking words just beyond comprehension. The power went out, plunging us into darkness broken only by our single flashlight. That's when we found the notebook. It was wedged between the couch cushions, a water-stained journal bound in cracked leather. The entries started normally enough. Observations about the wildlife, trail conditions, weather patterns, but they grew increasingly frantic. Day 4. The lake isn't natural. Nothing here is natural. Day 7. He watches us sleep, always smiling. Day 9. Sarah's gone. He said I had to choose. Why did I choose? The final entry was different, written in what looked horrifyingly like dried blood. If you're reading this, you're already part of his game. A floorboard creaked behind us. We spun around, Ethan raising the flashlight beam to illuminate the intruder. The man from the lake stood in our living room, head tilted at an impossible angle, that same terrible smile stretching his face. He wore casual hiking clothes, like any tourist might, but they were soaked through, lake water pooling at his feet. "I've been waiting for this moment," he said, his voice carrying that same unnatural quality it had at the lake. "You'll do nicely, both of you." What followed was a game of cat and mouse through the darkened cabin. He was toying with us, chasing and retreating, speaking in whispers and trying to lure us out of hiding. The worst part? He was patient. So patient. He spent hours just sitting outside our barricaded bedroom door, softly humming our song. By the third day, we were exhausted, desperate. That's when he made his final move. We woke to find ourselves bound in the basement, facing each other. The man stood between us, now dressed in an immaculate suit, bone dry despite the constant dripping of lake water from his hair. "Every couple that comes here has a choice to make," he explained, running his fingers along a row of photographs on the wall. I hadn't noticed them before. Dozens of couples, all young, all in love, all missing. One stays, one goes. Love is sacrifice, after all. What happened next still haunts my dreams. Ethan managed to free himself. He'd always been clever with knots. But instead of running, he attacked our captor. "Run, Lily!" he screamed as they grappled. "Don't look back!" I didn't run. I couldn't leave him. Using the pocket knife we'd managed to hide, I cut myself free and joined the fight. But the man was impossibly strong. Every wound we inflicted didn't slow him down or even seem to faze him. In the end, it came down to a choice. The man had Ethan in a chokehold, a twisted smile on his face. "Choose, Lily," he whispered. "Your freedom or his life." I threw the knife. To this day, I'm not sure what happened next. There was a sound like rushing water, a scream that could have been human or something else, and darkness. When I came to, I was alone in the basement. No sign of Ethan or the man. Just a puddle of lake water and a final red rose. The police found me wandering the forest road the next morning. They searched the cabin, the lake, the entire area. They found evidence of other victims, dozens of them over the years. But they never found Ethan, or the man. Just a trail of wet footprints leading into the lake, where they disappeared. Sometimes, on rainy nights, I think I hear our wedding song being hummed softly outside my window. And when I look out, there's always a fresh red rose on the windowsill, water droplets still clinging to its petals. They never did drain that lake. The locals say it's bottomless anyway. But I know the truth. It's not bottomless. It's hungry. And somewhere in its depths, the man is still waiting, smiling that terrible smile, ready to play his game with the next happy couple looking for a perfect honeymoon. After all, love is sacrifice, and some sacrifices are eternal.